Hi, and welcome to this vidcast designed by academic development tutors in the Learning Development Centre in the School of Health and Life Sciences to help students think about preparing for lectures and their note-taking skills and techniques. There are many different types of classes at university. Not all formats suit all learners, so you may feel more comfortable in some settings over others. Lectures are something you will all experience. Sometimes you'll have hundreds of other students in your class from different programmes across the university, and other times you might only have students from your own programme. If you're not used to this environment can be quite daunting, but you will soon get used to it. The lecturer will generally stand at the front of the class and do most, if not all, of the talking. Although sometimes lecturers like to make their class more interactive and so might ask you to participate by answering questions. This can make some students really nervous and you may not want to speak out, but the more interactive a class is, the more engaging it can be for students. So do try and give it a go if you feel able. The lecturer may also stop at different points and ask if there are any questions. Take advantage of this. If you have a question or are unsure about something the lecturer has said, it's likely that others will have the same question and are maybe too shy to speak up. Remember, these lectures are for your benefit, so make the most of your time here. The purpose of lectures is to introduce a topic, to give an overview of an area or theory, and then you have to go away and enhance your learning by doing further reading and research. If you think about it in terms, for example, psychology, you couldn't possibly learn everything about, say, mental health in just 1 or 2 hours. So your lecturer's there to direct your learning, and it's up to you to fill in the gaps after that. The skills involved in lectures are listening, note-taking and preparation. Lots of students don't prepare before a lecture, but if you think about it, refreshing your memory on a topic by reading the previous lecture notes or reading up on the topic before the lecture means everything you hear will not be brand new. This lets you focus more on the examples and in-depth comments that your lecturer makes. As well as attending lectures, you'll also have smaller classes which are called seminars or tutorials. These classes are a great opportunity to discuss a particular topic in more detail. It's likely that the small group discussion will be led by your tutor, who will be a member of academic staff, and you'll usually be expected to do some work beforehand, using online resources or reading before the class. You may even be asked to do a bit of writing. Again, please take advantage of these classes. This small group setting can be much more comfortable for some students. Also, it's more difficult to hide in these classes if you haven't done the work, so if possible, please make sure you're prepared. The tutor will expect you to do your best to prepare and may even ask you to leave the class if you consistently turn up having done no preparation. However, there are of course some occasions in life where life will get in the way and things out with your control may happen to prevent you from doing as much prep as you can. If this is the case, please contact your seminar tutor to let them know. It's much better to do this than to just not attend. The skills involved in these smaller classes are preparation, participation and even presentation. Often assessed presentations take place in these small group settings, so try and participate and become as comfortable as you can in the class before it gets to the assessment. You may also be asked to participate in labs as part of your programme. These classes are generally more hands-on. For some programmes this will mean being in an actual laboratory, but for others this will mean being in a computer lab where you will work on an experiment. For example, for psychology students this may be something like Sniffy the Rat. So you may work on the experiment or you may be collecting and analysing data as you go through your programme. The skills here are often more focused on listening, watching and doing, so some students prefer these classes as they're more hands-on. Have a think, is there anything that's really worrying you about any of these types of classes that I've just described? Here are some of the common worries that students have about lectures in particular. Getting there can be a real concern if you have other commitments like childcare or work. We expect you to attend all classes and prepare, but if this isn't possible, contact the lecturer to discuss your options. You can't expect to not attend and have someone provide you with all the notes and everything that you've missed, so try and be reasonable with your expectations here too. Your programme team will really do everything they can to support you if you're struggling to get to lectures, but we do expect attending lectures to be a high priority for you. Some students also worry about lectures as they feel they won't understand what's going on or know what to write down, as a lot of the information is new and you may not know what information is crucial. This is where doing some preparation will really help. If you've done some reading beforehand, it's much more likely that you will follow what the lecturer is talking about, and you may even be able to form some more in-depth thoughts on the topics than you would do if you were just hearing about them for the first time in class. Also, as I've already said, there may be an opportunity to ask questions, or you could try and do some reading after class to help you to get up to speed with a topic as well. If you do this and still feel you don't quite understand the topic, then speak to your tutor or lecturer and they may be able to provide you with some more information or some useful resources to look at. Not knowing what to write down is also a really common worry. If everything is new, you may struggle to understand what the most crucial points are. Again, preparation before the lecture will really help with that. Also, pay attention to the structure of the lecture. The lecturer will often tell you exactly what they will cover and what they expect you to understand by the end of the lecture, so pay attention to that and note down those crucial points. Also, lecturers may pause on important points, they may repeat them, or they may really emphasise them with examples. Pay particular attention to the examples given. These are often the richest source of information, as they can really help you understand the topic and bring it to life. Not being able to write everything down is a worry for some students, but you don't have to write every single word. You'll become more used to picking out key terms as you go on. I'll talk more about this later when I talk about the note-taking techniques. Also, something that's really important is to switch off your phone. It is so disrespectful to your lecturer and also to the rest of the class if you're sitting using your phone. It's distracting, so please don't do it. You don't need to look at your phone to check the time either. It's your lecturer's job to keep track of the time, so just put it away until after the class. The first important rule that you've got to set for yourself is to attend every lecture. This does not make you a bore, this just means you're committed to your programme. It's important to get into this type of good habit from the first year, as by the time you get into third and fourth year, you won't be easily to catch up with the lectures that you've missed. Some students might say, well, why bother, because all the slides are going to be on GCU Learn anyway. However, look at this next slide. What do you think this slide is about? It's not really easy to tell, is it? This is a photograph of a Japanese girl called Kamimura Tomoko being bathed by her mother. She lived in a small fishing village in Minamata and was born blind, deaf and unable to use her legs due to mercury poisoning whilst in the womb. A local factory was found to be responsible for poisoning the water supply, and there was a large scandal in the 70s when the photographer highlighted the effects. This photograph was used in a lecture that I attended, which was concerning spirituality in healthcare. The lecturer used this photograph as a talking point and to discuss defining difficult concepts such as love or care. You would never know this if you hadn't attended the lecture. There may also be diagrams on the GCU Learn slides, such as a brain or different parts of the body. Sometimes the lecturer will fill in the labels and give examples during class, and so you're really not getting all the information if you don't attend. Some lecturers will put slides on GCU Learn a few days beforehand. A really good idea if this is the case is to print them off before the class. What to do is to print 3 slides per page and get lines for notes beside each slide. That means you can take notes directly on the slides. Okay, there are also some really common mistakes in note taking that would be good to address at this point, just so you know what to do and what not to do. Most people lose concentration over the middle 15 to 20 minutes of a lecture and switch off. Try to concentrate throughout, as if you don't write down explanations for the facts that you're writing down, they'll be meaningless when you go to revise. Also, if you find yourself switching off, try and give yourself a little shake and kind of get yourself psyched up to get back into the rest of the lecture. Don't just let all the words wash over you and sit there passively. And don't just write down the facts and figures, write down the examples you're given, and also make notes of things that you don't understand. Then you can follow these up after class to get a better understanding of the topic. Some students also think that they don't actually have to write notes and that they'll just remember the information. This is not the case. Studies have shown that we forget most of what we hear within 48 hours in lectures, so you need to write it down or record it somewhere. You might also have some lectures that interest you much less than others. Remember, they're all there for a reason, and the topics build on each other. You really might have to try and psych yourself up from some of the classes to keep yourself motivated and actively listening. Dismissing a topic as boring will only cause you to get distracted and make life difficult for you. Remember, it's your responsibility to learn, not the lecturer's responsibility to make the subject personally appealing to you. Some students also become emotionally involved in some of the topics that are discussed in lectures. This is really difficult if a subject is quite personal to you, but again, it's trying to switch that off during the class, write down the notes as best you can, and then deal with those feelings after the class and possibly speak to the lecturer if you feel you have to. A good idea also is to try not to write everything down in full sentences, as you just won't have time. You can develop your own shorthand in class. Little things like using an arrow or shortening words can really help you save time. Also, the bottom symbol here on the screen is a symbol for psychology, so you could use that instead of writing the word psychology over and over again. Notes also have to be complete if they're going to be useful to you for assessments. So this is really crucial to try and fill in your notes, and it's often the part that students neglect. So after the lecture, it's a really great idea to go back and look over your notes and look and ask yourself, do they make sense to you? Have you missed any definitions? Do you need to look for more examples in textbooks or journal papers? Your notes have to be complete to be useful. So do try and spend some time going over your notes after class so you can fill in the gaps. Okay, now let's look at some different types of note-taking techniques. So some students try and write everything down word for word that the lecturer is saying. It's really not always possible. Some students find they can't write quickly enough to do this, and you'd end up with a lot of repetition and pointless connecting words in your notes. It really doesn't take any thinking or active listening on your part, so you might also not be taking in the information as well if you're just trying to copy down what the lecturer is saying. So there are many different ways to take notes, and it's important to try and experiment until you find a style that suits you. Your notes should be individual to you and should suit your different learning preferences. So think, do you like lists, pictures, bullet points, full sentences? Do you use colours, headings, or do you underline the key points? So have a think about this, because it will really help you develop your note-taking techniques. A common method of note-taking that students use is using the kind of outline method, where basically you have lots of headings and bullet points and side headings written down to yourself, and this would be an example. So make sure you record the lecturer's name, date of the lecture, and the topic of the lecture. And then basically it just involves writing things down in note form and underlining the key points. What you can then do is go back to your notes later and highlight the things that are really key and start to try and test yourself on the different topics that are coming up that you think may be in an assessment or exam. Another system you can think about trying is called the Cornell system. So called as this is where it was developed, Cornell University. So you would split your page up, as can be seen on screen, into 3 different sections. The middle section is where you would just take the normal notes that you take during a lecture, okay, so using abbreviations, symbols, diagrams, pictures, anything that works for you in this middle section, okay, just keeping it brief and not necessarily writing everything in full sentences. The Q column at the side here is to help you condense the material. So here you can jot down key phrases, key words and concepts in shorthand. This helps clarify meaning for you and allows you to see the relationship between ideas. So in this column, as I say, write down some key words or phrases to summarise the main points of the lecture. You could even write down questions here to test yourself. Testing yourself in this way is one of the best ways to make sure you actually understand the topics. So for example, if we look at the topic of mental health, you could have a question in the Q column here asking you what is a definition of mental health, or what are the categories of mental health. The section at the bottom is for you to sum up the lecture. You should try to do this within a couple of days of the lecture while it's still fresh in your mind. This will help you test yourself to see if you understood the class and got the main points. If you didn't, then it's better to know sooner rather than later, and you can do some extra reading to help fill in any gaps. This part's also crucial, as later on when you're using your notes to help you study, you'll be able to see what was covered really quickly without searching through piles and piles of lecture notes. But just make sure that you keep a note of the lecturer's name or the title of the book, all the kind of referencing details that you might need to refer to later. And this would be an example of that type of note-taking being put into practice. So for this student, the topic has been mental health psychology. So in the main column, they've taken some notes, some definitions, and some different categorisations of mental health. In the side column, the Q column, they've written down definition, mental health psychology. This means when you look at your notes later, you can really easily see what is covered in the main body because your notes at the side will be telling you. Also, this person's also decided to test themselves. So they've written a question for themselves on the side. What are the main 3 categories? You could then cover your notes and write an answer and then go back to your notes to check if you were correct. Mind mapping is another technique that some students use when taking notes. Here, you put the topic in the centre, the main topic, and then have different main points or themes shooting off from the main topic. You can then also add more sub-points to each of these main topics. This helps you to take notes quickly and to establish a relationship between concepts. This might be quite difficult to do during a lecture, but this is another great study technique that you can use after a lecture or before an exam. You can start to put things into different categories or hierarchies with bigger concepts closer to the centre and possibly less important ones and further branches out. This is an example of a more detailed mind map. As you can see here, health is the main topic. And then the main things that this person thought affected health, such as exercise and sleep, shoot off from the main topic. This also allows you to be creative. You can use colours, pictures, single words. It's also excellent for developing critical thinking, as you have to make connections between topics to be able to link them. As I said, it's really good for exam revision, as this can help you see the main points surrounding a topic really quickly without having to read pages and pages of notes. Some students have found it useful to make mind maps and have them round the house near exam time so they can really quickly look and revise and check. This is also good for people who don't like words as much and like to do things a little more visually. So they might try and draw a mind map after each lecture. What you could do now is go through this podcast from the beginning and practice one of the techniques I've just described. For more information on preparing for lectures and note-taking tips, please contact the Learning Development Centre.